start recording. So this is the Q&A session for the Workforce Development Training Fund program. And this is really just to give a high-level overview of the 5 grants under Wdtf. And then it opens it up for questions at the end. You're welcome to ask questions through chat or by utilizing the raise your hand function of Zoom. So I'll kind of start by introducing myself. I'm a Workforce Development Training Fund program specialist, and I've been working in the program for 5 years, primarily under the business training grant, but I've done a lot with the other grants as well. And I also have other members of the Workforce Development Training Fund team here on the call with me, including Sharon Geisler, the Wdtf program manager, and Johnny Jones, who will be helping me in this presentation today. So to get started with the summary of the Wdtf grants, I'll go ahead and share my screen to kind of show you guys the website that we're working off of. Okay, so can everybody share or see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So here's the landing page for the Department of Workforce Services. I'm going to try actually to get my screen to a different place. Sorry. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, so here's the landing page for the DWS website. And if you go to divisions and hover over that, then you'll see the business training and support unit link. And if you click on that, then that'll open you up to our overall unit as the business training and support unit. And there are a few different programs underneath the business training and support unit. What we'll be talking about today is the Workforce Development Training Fund program, which you can see right here, the link to that. So here's the landing page for specifically the Wdtf. And really the purpose of all of the grants under Wdtf is to serve Wyoming-based businesses with their business needs. All of the grants are reimbursement models, and 4 out of the 5 grants are Google-based applications, and then the business training grant is managed in an online grant management system. So we'll just kind of start going through this landing page. Here at the top, it really goes over the changes that we made to the parameters of the grants. All of the grants we've made some changes to, and this kind of gives an overview of what that looks like. Basically, all of this went into effect May 1st, and the rules are still in place. The rules that were set, I think it was August of last year, are still in place. However, there's just new parameters within the rules that we've set that will now be set upon applications or throughout the applications of the grants. So here, it kind of, the main process now that we're going off of is each of the grants have an open window of the first 7 calendar days of each month to apply for a grant. You can create applications before that date. You just can't submit them until that date. And, you know, we're able to provide technical assistance up until that point as you go through the application process, as you get in good standing with the different entities, as you set up an account for the business training grant. Things like that, we're able to help you through that process. And then once it's submitted, we accept the applications as is. So before submitting an application, in order for the application to be considered, you have to be in good standing with the Wyoming Unemployment Insurance, Workers' Compensation, Secretary of State at the time the application is submitted. So getting in touch with those different entities prior to submitting the application is definitely highly recommended and required to make sure that you are in good standing at the time that you hit the submit button on any of the grant applications. And that process can take up to 2 to 4 weeks, depending on where you're at. If you are already established within them, then I would still check in with them and make sure that you're in good standing and that you're up to date in your registration or your account. If you're brand new, then I would definitely allow that 2 to 4 weeks for that process to take place and for you to become in good standing before you can apply for the grant. So applications that were denied due to registration or good standing issues may submit new application in the following months as long as you ensure that your account is in good standing prior to resubmitting. So for all the grants, all the applications must be complete, which means all the documentations must be uploaded, all the questions must be answered accurately and thoroughly. And all of that has to be there in order to be considered in our process, in our application process. Preferred industries, which we'll kind of go through as we get into the different grants, but that will be a consideration as applications are received. And here I'll just kind of point out the preferred industries here. So there's 6 different areas that are designated by the Workforce Development Council as kind of the industries that we want to focus on. And if your application is denied due to limited funding, you may create a new application for the following month if the training is still within 30 days of that submit date. So that's a big question that we get a lot, is if I submit my application, especially under the business training grant, if I submit my application for the next month's training, will I be able to apply for that same training the next month? And the answer is no, because it's not going to meet that 30-day rule of being submitted 30 days before the first day of training or travel. If an application is denied due to errors, a new application will need to be created. And this is a completely new application. You can't use an existing application to reapply. And then our general rule of thumb is if you have not received communication from us within 2 weeks of the application window closing, so the 7th of each month, then we would recommend that you follow up with us requesting a status update. As you all are aware, this is where we keep our links to register for these Q&A sessions. Currently, we're holding them monthly, which is about a week or 2 before the next open window for application submissions, just to make sure that we're doing our best to address all the questions that are coming up as you're considering applying for any of the grants. And then here you can see where you can view existing or previous recordings of these meetings. And we really only have the ones based on the new parameters. We don't have any of the old ones because we're no longer supporting those parameters. So here you can click on any of these and it'll take you directly to that page for that grant. And then here's a little informative video just to kind of give you an overview of Wdtf, pretty brief. And then here is the contact for, because of the high volume of grants, we would prefer that you email us at this email address here. And that's just a designated email address where all of us get the emails that go to that And I will have Johnny put that into the chat, this email address. So you guys have that in case you need to contact us. You can always feel free to call us as well. And if necessary, go ahead and leave a voicemail. It's just easier for us to get to the emails quicker than phone calls and voicemails. So back up to the top here, if you look to the left, you'll see the different links that go to the grants. And we'll just start from the top here with apprenticeship grants. So these are designed specifically for registered apprenticeship programs for the training component that the program requires. It helps registered apprenticeship programs in Wyoming with training expenses that come with hosting an apprenticeship program. These expenses can be tuition, class materials, or potentially on-site instructor website or instructor wages, sorry. And the primary contact for apprenticeship grants is Ivy Moore. You can see her phone number here, and then our designated Wdtf email is where you can reach out regarding any apprenticeship related questions. And here's some links to the instructions, the application instructions, and also the actual grant application. And that'll kind of give you an idea. It has the budget worksheet linked in there. I'll just kind of show you. Oh, never mind. But it kind of gives you an idea of what the budget worksheet's going to look like. It gives you some links in there to help you through that application. Before even submitting any of the applications, I would highly suggest that you look at the rules for each of the grants, just so you get an idea of what the requirements are and the parameters around each of the grants before applying. And then you can see that there's a link to the final report and then the summary template. So that's as you get further down in the grant process. Okay, and then we'll move to business training grants. So the business training grants are the purpose of the business training grants is to help Wyoming businesses kind of upskill their trainees, correct any skill deficiency that they have within their trainees, upgrade their skill levels within their occupations. And you can see here that you can click on the rules right here at the top and look at those. Again, the parameters in the rules are different than what we're supporting within the application. So right now, the $2,000 per trainee per fiscal year is what we're supporting for non-preferred industries. And then if you do fall in the preferred industries, then you would be eligible for up to $3,000 per trainee per fiscal year under the business training grant. So here, this just basically gives you an overview of what the requirements are, what the purpose is of the grant. So correct an employee's skill or upgrade an employee's current skill level. There has to be a direct relationship between the training and the trainee's occupation. And there has to be a need for the skill upgrade provided by the training for the business to remain competitive within the industry. And they're also, so the business will not substitute funds normally provided for training or funds obtained from another source. So, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. And then all businesses are eligible for up to $75,000 per business per fiscal year. So those are the new parameters starting May 1st. These are some helpful links. I would say that if you're brand new to the business training grant, I would start with the action items link. So this just kind of gives you the steps to what takes place in the process for the business training grant. So you'll need to create an account. Well, I guess first be in good standing, make sure you're in good standing with all the entities I mentioned earlier. And then once you are, then you can create an account in the business training grant system. And that usually takes about 7 to 10 days to move on to the next step, which is getting approved in the system. As long as you're in good standing with unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, Secretary of State, and Wyoming at Work. Once we check all of those entities to make sure your status is good, then we approve it. That is when you can set up your own login and password to log into the system and create an application. You can always create applications and work on them. You just can't submit them until that first day of the month. And then in that process, then you can give us a call if you have any questions as you're going through the application. So the application has to be submitted at least 30 days prior to the first day of training or travel, whichever day comes first. Or it can be submitted 110 days out from that first day of training or travel. And then once you submit the application will go through the review process. It will be taken to a review panel, and if approved, then the trainee will attend the training, and upon the completion of the training, the trainee is required to retain 45 days of consecutive employment before the business is allowed to submit the final report. And that final report consists of all the receipts for the expenses that were requested in the application, along with a summary from each of the trainings, just telling us how it benefited them and, the skills that it upgraded or the skill that it corrected, skill deficiency that it corrected, along with a pay stub showing that employee has retained that consecutive employment for 45 days. Once we review the final report and it's shown to be good, and eligible for payment, then at that point we would reimburse based on the receipts that were provided in the final report documentation. So there's some other links here, like to instructions on how to create your account. Here's another link to the rules. And then these are more for employment verification. So as you're doing the process, and then if you have been approved for your account is approved in the business training grant system, then I would recommend that you go to this grant application instructions and get a real thorough idea of what that's going to look like and what you're going to need and the steps that need to take place for that. If you've done maybe 1 or 2 applications and you maybe need a refresher or, just kind of need to see it in a more condensed way, I would say to go to the application checklist. And this just kind of tells you what you're going to need for the application stage part of the process. And then here's the final report checklist. So that's once you've completed the training or the trainee has completed the training and you'll need to submit the final report. Here is kind of the steps in the checklist to go through what you'll need for that. And then these other forms are just to kind of help in different stages of the process. If you have any questions on that, you can sure reach out to us and ask. This next part of the site is essentially just kind of overview of what you'll need to do to create an application. So it's kind of like before you create an application, this is what you'll need to have. A lot of the same information that's in some of these links, but it's just more accessible in one place here. And then down here is where you'll find the most up-to-date process for submitting the application. So Again, it tells you that you can start the application, create it, and save it at any point. However, you're not going to be able to submit it until the first 7 days of the month. And also the training or the application must be submitted 30 to 110 days prior to that first day of training or travel. And then again, here it says applications are prioritized based on preferred industries as determined by that Workforce Development Training Council. If it's, you should be hearing from WDTF staff within that first 2 weeks of the window closing as far as your status. So if you're approved or denied, you should hear from us within that time frame. And I will hand it over to, oh, sorry. And then there's some other links here under business training grant for FAQs. There's just lots of different questions that we've received that kind of helps you to understand the different stages. There's everything from creating an account all the way to final report in this FAQ link. And then there's also similar content in the helpful hints as well. And then I will turn it over to Johnny to review internship grants.
Thank you, Brittany. I appreciate it. If you don't mind keeping your screen open, presenting, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny Jones. I'm an administrative assistant here with WDTF, and it's my privilege to discuss briefly the internship grants and the pre-hire grants, both of which I've had the privilege again of working closely with reviewing these grant applications. The internship grant is a great opportunity for not only for an individual to learn about an industry or learn about a specific job within that industry, but it's also a great opportunity for a business that's hosting the internship to share vital knowledge about the industry, about the job, and to give real life experience to an individual who may be considering that industry or that job. The internship grant itself, the internship itself is an opportunity that is provided by the business. It's a structured learning experience, and it is an opportunity where professionals within the industry and within that business can supervise the intern and again, provide opportunities for them to learn about the industry, everything from the daily tasks to some of the more in-depth idiosyncrasies of the business itself. The internship grants are awarded. An intern can achieve up to 480 hours during an internship. Oh, by the way, Savannah Vasquez is currently the in charge of our internship grant. She's online. So Savannah, if I'm overlooking anything, please don't hesitate to jump in and let me know. An internship can maximize at 480 hours. And depending on whether or not the intern works full-time or part-time, they could work for up to 3 weeks, I believe 12 weeks rather, 3 months full-time, or approximately 6 months part-time, depending on the distribution of their hours. The internship itself, the intern is to be mentored by someone within the organization, and a mentor can supervise up to 2 interns at once. WDTF allows for a business to host 3 internships during a given fiscal year. If an internship crosses over from the end of one fiscal year into the next, that does count against or count toward the 3 internships that a business can host. The internship itself is also an opportunity for the, as I mentioned earlier, for the intern to promote and give to the business. So this is a great opportunity for business, is a startup business, and is looking not only to train, but also to then it might be needing some additional work within the organization. And again, it's a great opportunity if the business enjoys the intern to offer that intern a permanent position with the business itself. The intern would be hired within the organization and put on their payroll. And the wage that the wage that is finalized for the internship, one of the preferred sources that we like to use is ONET Online. And ONET is a great opportunity not only to make sure that the wage that's being offered is comparable to other businesses in the Wyoming-based businesses, but you'll get a full range on ONET. You'll get a full range from the lowest end of what's being offered for that position or similar positions to the high end. We do encourage, because it is an internship learning experience, we do encourage the business to lean toward the lower end of the price wage spectrum. We can reimburse up to $18 per hour for those 480 hours. The internship also is, the application is also a Google form application. And as Brittany mentioned earlier, it is something that you can start and come back to later. The window, however, is consistent with all of the grants, the window of the first 7 calendar days within each month that an application can be submitted. And it really doesn't matter if it's the midnight of the very first day all the way to midnight of the very last day. We do encourage the application to be complete and the application to be as detailed as possible. Again, it doesn't matter if it's the first one that we receive or the last one; they all get equal consideration. We just encourage them to be complete and as detailed as possible. We can, as Brittany mentioned, we can assist with any of the technical questions you may have with regard to preparing the application prior to submitting the application to Wdtf. The internship grant is one of many that Wdtf hosts. Another grant that I've had the privilege of working with is the pre-hire grant. The pre-hire grant is, I like to call it a synergetic experience, because the pre-hire grant is an opportunity for a business to work closely with the economic development organization within a specific area, as well as the training provider. And the way the pre-hire grant comes about, I guess you might say, is that when a business or an industry discovers that there's a need that's not being met within the given workforce, maybe it's a workforce skill that's lacking in that area, and so the business would approach a training provider and say, we're having difficulty filling this role. Can you assist us? So the training provider does just that, provides the training to help the workforce meet that skill level that's lacking, or that experience level that's lacking. And the partnering businesses that are in need of these workers, the partnering businesses would then agree to interview and seriously consider hiring the people who go through and complete the training itself. So again, it's a great synergetic experience of an entire community. The pre-hire grant involves the partnering businesses within the area, as I mentioned, that do agree to interview and seriously consider hiring. For that, the partnering businesses would also contribute to the development of the curriculum, development of the training, and the economic development entity in that area would assist with the placement of the individuals that are going and completing the training itself. The pre-hire grant is also a grant that application would be submitted the first 7 calendar days of a given month. And again, just as long as it's detailed and complete, it matters not if it's submitted the first day or the last day. Brittany did a much better job of going through the details of the website, but one of the things that we do encourage is that when you're considering applying for one of these grants, read through the rules that apply to that specific grant, and to avail yourself to as much information on our website as possible to learn as much about the grant. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to any one of us here at Wdtf, whether it be by email or by phone, both of which are listed in the chat as well. So I think that'll be it for me, Brittany. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. I did want to just add one thing to the internship piece. We do have a designated internship email address specifically for the internship. So the one that Johnny put in the chat, the dws-wdtf@wyo.gov, that is for all of WDTF. So any pre-hire related questions, apprenticeship related questions, business training grant would go to that email address. However, due to the volume of the internship applications that we get, we have a designated internship email address, which I put in the chat for you guys to have. I did want to just briefly touch on the pre-obligation grant. That is our last grant. And really, this grant is a dual application made by both the economic development entity and the collaborating business to either attract a new business to Wyoming as part of an economic development initiative or to expand an existing business within Wyoming. We would recommend that if you have interest in this grant, you could just reach out to WDTF to start the conversation around how the business needs fits within this grant, because it is fairly complex and layered and lots of conversation prior to the actual submission of the application.
Brittany, if I could interrupt, one thing that I overlooked sharing is that with the pre-hire grant, the application link itself will be up so that individuals and businesses can visit that link and look at the application. We won't be able to accept submissions except for those first calendar days, but the link should be there so they can look over the application and see the information that's needed and required prior to filling out the application.
Okay. Well, thank you, Johnny. Is there anything else that you want to add before we jump into questions?
I think that's it for me.
Okay. So like I said before, you guys can utilize the chat for questions, or you can just take yourself off mute, video, whatever, and ask it verbally. Use the raise your hand, whatever works for you guys. We're here to answer any of your questions.
Brittany and Johnny, if you guys are okay with it, Aaron is on the call and he actually sent me an email with specific questions that he had. And so I want to go ahead and address those. They are specific to apprenticeship and a possible pathway from internship to apprenticeship. And so I'll go ahead and address these. And then again, as you guys are wanting to ask additional questions or clarifying or follow up or anything, we can do that. And then also, if anyone is interested, we also can give you a tour of how to navigate ONET in order to come up with your supporting documentation for your internship grant. We're happy to do that as well. And I'm gonna maybe see if Savannah would like to do that component, since she's very familiar with it and can prep for that while I answer these questions. So Aaron wanted to know that they have several new hires brought on from May to June up to within the last week. Is there an expiration statute of limitations regarding their eligibility for programs, and how many qualify at one time? So there's a couple of things to answer this question. If you were looking at using the business training grant for these new hires, you can certainly do that. Once they do become an employee of your business, they are eligible for the business training grants. So that is one aspect that you can utilize our grants for them. And in regards to the limitation, even if they're a brand new hire and just started with you, they could utilize the business training grant. The component that you have to look at for that one is that they remain in your employment at least 45 days after the training, to then be eligible to submit the final report documentation so that you can get reimbursed for the approved expenses. And your business training grants, those dollar amounts, you guys are in plumbing and heating, and so you're in the construction industry. So your employees are eligible for up to $3,000 each fiscal year. And by the way, we did just start our new fiscal year. We're in fiscal year 24, which started on July 1st. Another question that you had is, with new hires coming with zero plumbing or mechanical experience, would the pre-hire economic development grant benefit us? and what training entities exist. So in regards to the pre-hire grant, this would not be an appropriate grant for that need because you've already hired them. The pre-hire grant is really intended to get that training, those individuals trained pre-employment for the intent that they can become employed in that industry. So once you've already hired them, you can certainly utilize the business training grant. And then if you are a registered apprenticeship program, then you could also look into the apprenticeship grant for their related instruction portion of their education. So hopefully that helps, and we can certainly dive in a little bit more if you have additional questions to that. One of your other questions was, how does one successfully transition employees from internship to an apprenticeship program? And so you can certainly layer those two grants. And so if you have a business that would like to bring somebody on, especially those individuals that don't have any experience and are learning the trade, you could potentially bring them on as an intern. They could get that learning in those 480 hours. And then once that internship is complete, if they're interested in continuing with your business as an apprentice, and then go into that career pathway for the apprenticeship program, then you would get them registered as an apprentice and they would go down that pathway, could potentially be available for the apprenticeship grant. But you can't have them simultaneously an intern and an apprentice at the same time. It has to be consecutive, internship first, and then they roll into being an apprentice. And then the last question, and then I'll open it up for questions. With a business entity being eligible to apply for $200,000 per state fiscal year, can we apply several times over the month's open application periods until we reach that max? I would like to remind you that that 200,000 that is stated in the rules has been changed, and that's part of the new parameters that we set to adjust to our funding availability. And now a business is available up to $75,000 per fiscal year. And yes, you as a business, when you're applying in the business training grant, and that cap is specific to the business training grant, you can put multiple trainees into training events that you're applying for up to that $75,000 cap. Each of those trainees are capped at $3,000. And so you can do several different trainings to utilize all of it. You don't have to utilize all of it. If you don't use it, it's fine. It renews every fiscal year. And so once this year's done, then in fiscal year 25, you'll have a new yearly cap. And so hopefully I answered your questions, but I also want to open it up now, Aaron and anybody else, if you want to dive into any of that a little bit more.
Sharon, thank you so much. That was that was the needed clarity I needed, and thank you, Brittany and Johnny, as well for your guidance. I wonder if forgive me if you already addressed this, Brittany. Was there a list contained within the website of entities that, say, a plumbing and heating outfit can make use of?
As far as preferred industries? Or I guess, are you looking for a list of
training providers, maybe?
Right. Yeah, there we go. Training providers. Yes.
Go ahead,
If I may, Brittany. So yes, so specifically for plumbing and HVAC and mechanical, LCCC is a great resource and has programs stood up to help in those areas. And they're also working with businesses locally from an apprenticeship program perspective. And so if you haven't already connected with them, I would highly recommend that component. But then I'll also let Brittany address what she knows about from other providers for business training grants.
And I don't know of any actual lists providing, for any one industry to say, hey, these are the lists of training providers. Most of that, I think, is LCCC is a really good resource. And then otherwise just kind of finding your training events that are applicable to your trainees' needs, your business needs. whatever that looks like for your business. Did that answer your question, Erin?
So he did type in, thank you, yes.
Oh, okay.
We have a few other businesses on the line. Would anybody be interested in getting a quick tour of ONET, or do you have additional questions about any of the grants or the applications? Okay. Well, I'm not sure if it sounds like maybe we've addressed everybody's questions or what they would like to. Oh, we do have an ONET tour. Yes. Savannah, I know I threw you under the bus for this, but would you be interested in doing a quick walkthrough?
Yeah, definitely. Let me attempt to share my screen here. Okay. Maybe. Am I sharing the screen? Maybe.
Yes,
Okay.
you are.
Okay, so here is our website, kind of how Brittany went through earlier. So if you scroll down to the bottom, there's ONET right here. If you click that link, it'll pull up ONET online. This is where you can find the wage supporting documentation for your application, mainly for internship is what we use it for. So you'll put in the job role in here. So we can search like bookkeeping, just as a example. So you'll type in the role up there. It'll come up with a list here of different types of positions, and then you can kind of look through here and find a role that best matches the idea you have in mind for your intern. And so we can look at this first one. So we have a bookkeeping clerk. When you click on him, it'll give you a brief overview of what the role is, the different tasks, skills. And if you scroll towards the bottom, it'll have the wage and employment trends right here. You're going to select Wyoming from this list, and then you'll hit go. And then it'll provide the annual wages here, and you're going to click hourly, and then it'll pull up the low, average, and then, oops, sorry, the low, average, and then high wage for the role. And then this whole screen is what we're going to need a screenshot of as you apply for the internship grant. So you'll just take a screenshot of this entire page that'll show the low, average, and the high rates for the role, and then upload it as a PDF document onto the application. And that is what we use as a wage supporting documentation. For the internships, the wage that you request should be on the low to average end because it is an internship opportunity and a learning experience for the intern. But this will kind of give you a gauge on how to request that information. I think that's it for internship.
Thank you, Savannah. Has anybody else come up with any additional questions? Erin, Gary, I think you're it. Do you have any questions regarding any of the grants?
I'm just doing a quick scroll through the chats just to make sure we didn't miss any other questions, but I think we've caught them all.
Okay, well, thank you for joining, and please let us know as you jump into any of the grants that you want to apply for. Let us know if you come up with any questions via the email address that we sent for Wdtf or the internship grant, that designated email. Thanks for joining, everybody. I hope you have a good day.